Hi guys, so as I said in the Facebook post, we're going to be using the glute hip bridge as a means of training our glutes throughout the transformation. Thought I'd put together a little video on the actual exercise itself, as it can be fairly technically difficult if a few of the cues are off. So what we got here is a decent amount of weight. So the glute is a very strong muscle, so we need to challenge it with a decent tonnage in order for it to actually fire for its capabilities. So a couple of kind of teaching points to begin with is the bench setup. So we need it against something because of the way that we're going to be driving our hips up. What can happen if you don't have it against something is that the bench slides back, which then takes your feet away relative to where you are, which then changes which musculature we're going to use. So we're going to end up driving with the hamstring more than the glute. So we need it up against something. The second thing is that where the bench sits on your back needs to be at the bottom of... Sorry, Jack walked in. So when that bench is up against the bottom of the thoracic, that will allow us, when we do drive up, for our upper back to end up on top of the bench, which is where we want it to be. Next one is bum position. So we do want quite a vertical torso before we start. So you'll see in a minute when I do bring the bar back in, is that I'm kind of sat fairly upright as well. So if we just wind it forward a little bit. So the other thing to make sure is that the crease of the pad is facing up. One of the main complaints is obviously that the bar hurts because it's right into the hip line. So if we can have that Velcro pointing up before we start, we know that we're going to get a decent amount of padding between us and the bar. Next is that we have to bring our heels towards our body. If we're looking for a 90-degree bend at the knee at the top position, which will allow us to get full glute activation and not as little hamstring as possible, but less of the emphasis onto the hamstring. We need to bring our knees up towards our chest a little bit. So one of the things that I can't bring my knees up without doing it, so I'm going to grab behind my knee, I'm going to pull that leg back into my body, and that will allow me to set my feet in the right position. The other thing is that the distance between our heels, although it doesn't matter entirely, I'd prefer if you have it around about the same distance as your squat, just for continuity. Next, after we've brought that bar in, we are going to then try and drive the bar away with our hands. So usually around about a snatch grip will allow us to drive the bar away, and what that'll do is it'll keep the bar off your pubic bone. If you have it on your pubic bone, it's going to feel like it's going to crush it, and again, you'll probably stop the exercise early just due to pain in the hip bone. Especially for females, it tends to be quite a kind of, especially if you have had kids and that kind of pelvic bone has been moved around during pregnancy, you definitely want it below that point. Okay, so I drive the bar away. Okay, take a nice deep breath, and then I drive up. Okay, so I'm going to drive my hips up to the ceiling, but I'm using my glute. Okay, so I'm not trying to just flick my hips up, I'm trying to drive my glutes from the ground directly up to the ceiling. I've got this 90-degree bend at the knee. I'm also driving my knees out. Also, what I'm trying not to do is let this point here, so on the chest, arch backwards. Okay, so one of the ways I can do that is by keeping my eye line looking down my body. Okay, so I don't want to throw my head back. I want to keep my eye line down my body, looking down my body, so I can always see my torso and also essentially the top of my thighs. Okay, so that's my eye line, is just looking down the body the whole time. When we get to that top point there, we want to try and get that posterior pelvic tilt. Okay, so I might have to do a video on that, but if you imagine if you're standing upright and you arch the bottom of your back, that's an anterior tilt. What we want to try and do is pull our pelvic bone up towards our chest, and that'd be a posterior pelvic tilt, and that's where we get a full glute contraction. If we miss out on that, essentially we're only getting half the exercise, and you'll never get that full ability to contract and get the most amount of power out of your glutes, and also you won't be able to fully develop them either. So if we just wind on a little bit, we come down to the floor each time. Okay, we want to get that full, as much range as possible with this kind of setup without getting natural machine to go off. We can't keep the tension really at the bottom, so we're going to fully deload and also re-engage each rep. As you can see, I mean, I can't deadlift 100. I think I worked up to about 170 on this. I can't deadlift 170 for 15 reps currently. What I can do is do this because it's a shorter movement and because it's a very strong set of muscles. If you get the technique right on this, you can use an awful lot of weight to drive those glutes kind of development. So there you go. That's the technique. We will be using it a lot. Maybe practice it a little bit between now and then. Start with say 60 kilos. Even the girls, just like put some weight on it and give it a go.